NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is the Tuesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres, joined as always by Mike DiStefano from Locked On Leafs. We are both night owls, so we're recording this at midnight, technically on Tuesday. So it is still Tuesday's edition, which means I'm not going to screw up yesterday, today. That's okay anyway, because we're not doing any news today. We're going to jump right into it, Mike, in just a second. But we have our Atlantic Division preview today on the podcast. But first of all, how are you doing today? How's getting ready for the Leaf season going?
It's going well. We had we've got a couple of preseason games that we've gone through already. We had our blue and white scrimmage game that went down over the weekend that we were able to see and get a good glimpse of the squad. And then there's another game on Tuesday. So back-to-back preseason action. But yeah, it's been good. I've seen some things that I've liked. I see some things that I don't like. Got a good chance to take a peek at some of the new guys. What are you? How's it going in Buffalo? I feel like it may not be the same.
See any pictures of the arena?
No.
Sparse crowd. I mean, so my buddy Brian Koziel, who does Sabres pregame on WGR in Buffalo, before the game, talking to him down the line at the station, I was in the studio, he was at the arena, and he said to me, I could count 50 people in the 300 levels and maybe 100 more in the 100 levels. And that was maybe 15 minutes before puck drop. So I'm not sure where that ended up, but and it's only preseason, but sign of things to come, maybe that attendance at Buffalo Sabre games this year is going to be brutal with expectations as low as they are. And the playoff drought now reaching a decade long since they have made the postseason. So that's how things are going here, but nothing unexpected, I would say so far. But we're going to talk more about both of our teams, the Leafs and the Sabres, because we are doing the Atlantic Division today as our season preview. And before we really jump into it, we did our over-unders for the entire Eastern Conference on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to check out how we feel about the betting lines for each of these teams, then that is available to you on one of our more recent episodes here on the Locked On NHL podcast. And if you want more of the news items for what's happened in the past couple of days, check out Monday's edition with Sarah Avampato of the Locked On NHL podcast, including what's been going on with Robin Leonard over the past couple of days. But let us start with the first team of the Atlantic Division preview, the Tampa Bay Lightning.
What's up, everybody? Adam Danker here from Locked On Lightning, and I'm here to tell you the 5 things that need to happen or things to look out for this upcoming season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 1, what is the single biggest storyline? That's pretty simple. The Lightning are looking to do something that no team has done in a very long time, and that is three-peat as Stanley Cup champions. Now, a lot of people might discredit these last 2 cup runs because of the length of the seasons, pandemic all around, but guess what? The Lightning are going to prove this season not only they are for real, but as to reason why they are the defending Stanley Cup champions. Number 2, this will be a successful season if the Tampa Bay Lightning have Braden Point scoring goals. That's pretty simple. I know it sounds very, very simple, clear cut, but that's what it is. You know, you have the Nikita Kucherovs, the Steven Stamkos, the Andre Vasilevskis, the Victor Hedmans. Those are by far the best known players on this team, the superstars, and that rightly so. These guys are the lifeblood of this team, but Braden Point is the superstar of the future. Now, if you are not a Lightning fan, you're asking yourself, why Braden Point? Well, Braden Point has had one of the quietest, greatest last couple of years, probably an NHL season. Now, we all know him as this playoff hero, but Braden Point, dating back to the last 3 years, scoring 41 goals in the 2018-19 season, going to 25 in 1920, and then 23 in 2021. Now, those little drop-off in goals, you could attribute that to the length of the season, injury here and there as well. But guess what? With the 82-game season upon us this year, expect Braden Point to put up crazy numbers. I'm expecting 40-goal season, close to 100 points this year, and that's all because of guys like Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos on his line that he's going to be playing with up and down the ice. And when you have a goaltender as great as Andre Vasilevsky, I mean, you could relax just a little bit, play your game. And that's why Braden Point, I firmly believe not only is he going to score a bunch of goals and put up a lot of points, but I believe that he's going to put himself into the Hart Trophy conversation this season. Point number 3. This will be an unsuccessful season if the Tampa Bay Lightning are ravaged by injuries. Now, the Lightning have been playing a little bit dangerously the last couple of seasons, and they've lucked out. Let's face it, they've lucked out a little bit with the pandemic hitting in 2020, with the season being very condensed last year, with Nikita Kucherov coming back in the playoffs. But now they have a tough task, 82-game season, a very grueling season ahead of them. The Atlantic Division is back together, so you're going to have everybody gunning for them, not only in this division, but all around the NHL. So a lot of teams are going to go out there playing hard, and that's going to bring a lot of physical play as well as injuries along the way. So if the Lightning could weather the storm and be able to perform the way they have the last couple of seasons and just get into the playoffs, we know with this team, anything could happen. You could have players time up their returns at the right moment. We saw it with Victor Hedman. We saw it with guys, especially most notably and controversially, Nikita Kucherov coming back in the playoffs. When the stars align for this team, they are by far the best team in the NHL. And if they could just stay off the injury bug and limit the injuries all around the team, I firmly believe they'll be fine. If they can't do that, we might be talking about a different scenario to the end of the season in terms of the expectations we might look forward to this team. Reason, point, whatever you want to call it, number 4, who is relatively unknown on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'll tell you, Lightning fans know about this guy, but the rest of the NHL don't know him. Now, regular NHL fans might say, Braden Point, 100%. Well, I'm going to do you one better. Alexander Bar Boulay. Last year was his rookie season. He's coming into his second year. 24 years old this season, 15 games played, 3 goals, throughout his time. Very limited play, but let me tell you, this kid could score goals, and that's why he might be getting some time on the third line, possibly the second line this year with John Cooper as the head coach. Obviously, with the exit of the Yanni Gourdes, the Blake Colemans, and the Barclay Goodrows, John Cooper has a tough task to replace that storied third line, probably one of the best third lines in the NHL over the last couple of seasons, possibly in NHL history. The conversation could be had for that. But Alexander Bar Boulay is on this team for one reason and one reason only, that is to score goals, and he is going to do that this year. He has had, in his last couple of years with the Syracuse Crunch, let me put him up for you, in 2 full seasons with the Crunch, 34 goals in the 18-19 season and 27 in the 19-20 season. Let me tell you, this kid, if he could get rolling, especially with the parts and the players he has on the ice with him, watch out, NHL. You're definitely going to talk about this guy as possibly the best next thing to hit the ice in the NHL. And last but not least, point number 5. What is the prediction? Now, if you're a listener to Locked On Lightning, you know I love to throw around the predictions. I love to make bold predictions. I love to say this. I love to say that. And if you've been a listener for the show a long time, you know that I'm usually right. But I would say, what the Lightning, we're going to dial it back a little bit this year, because guess what? These are the 2-time defending champions. They've had a grueling 2 years, really 10 months. Winning 2 championships in the span of 10 months is really an incredible thing to be done, especially in the COVID bubble the year before, the first time when they beat Dallas, and now winning 10 months later against Montreal, and now going into an 82-game season. It's going to be tough with all the pieces moving in and out, with all the fatigue that is setting in with some of the veteran players on this team. It's a tough task to ask for this team to three-peat as champions, especially in such a talented, stacked National Hockey League that we have today, with all the players around the league, especially with the Atlantic Division coming back. When I say the Atlantic Division, I mean the OG Atlantic Division, not the one that we had last year. But listen, the prediction I'm going to be throwing out for the Tampa Bay Lightning is expect nothing lower than an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. After that, we all know you're playing with house money. Anything could happen. Lightning get on a roll at that point once they hit the conference finals. And, we might be having the conversation in June. Are the Lightning one of the best teams of this era and this decade? So tune in for that. Tune in to Locked On Lightning on a daily basis once the season starts, especially in next couple of weeks as the Lightning set to raise the banner of their previous Stanley Cup championship on opening night against Pittsburgh. Please subscribe to Locked On Lightning at LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Locked On Lightning, Locked On_Lightning on Instagram for all the latest news surrounding the defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions. And I'll see you at the finish line.
So, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mike, do you think they are the division winners this year? Should they be the betting favorite like they are to be the division winners in the Atlantic?
Yes. Yes, they should. I mean, they're the 2-time defending champions. Like, yeah. I know they've lost. They got some of their fat trimmed a little bit. They're going to be just a tinge worse when it comes to their depth. But, I mean, then they've just got guys who just keep coming up the pipeline. Like, dudes like Ross Colton. Dudes just a bunch of guys are going to come through.
But, yeah.
Like they always do from the AHL. Alex Bar Boulay is the player who I was trying to think of but could not.
Yep.
Him, Boris Kachuk. I mean, there's some guys who I guarantee you who you don't know right now who by midseason or at least in the playoffs, you're going to know their name because they're going to go out and they're just going to be scoring goals. You're going to be like, how do they keep doing this? Mm-hmm. They've got the best defenseman in the world. They got the best goaltender in the world. And they've got arguably three top. They had 3 or 4 top 50 players from our top 50 list. Forwards,
right?
Oh.
I thought you were going to get to Corey Perry there as guys that are up and coming because it's amazing to me that he is on that team right now. That guy just keeps bouncing around. He's cup chasing. Corey Perry is end of his career here. But anyways, I agree. I think the Lightning deserve to be number one. It's one of the best built rosters I've ever seen in my life. They have the best goalie in the world, as you mentioned, the best defenseman in the world, and Victor Hedman. And they're just so good. And the top 6 of their forward group, there's so many elite goal scorers. Interesting that I've been reading through training camp so far that their center depth has been going Braden Point and the top. They put Stamkos in the second line right wing with Anthony Cirelli as a centerman, and then Ross Colton and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare as their 4 centers, 1, 2, 3, 4 down the middle. But again, even if, let's see what Ross Colton does is in that third line center spot that Tyler Johnson's really been occupying over the past couple of years. He's now out. If it's not working out, they just throw Stamkos back in the middle. Or, they can fiddle around Matthew Joseph. They could put back at center. He's been playing in the wing. If that's their weakness, they can fix it pretty quickly. So I think the Lightning are the bona fide favorites. I think they deserve to be. And there's a reason why they're the first ones that we get to here. Second, we're going in order of the Bet Online over-under point totals. Second on that list was the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your Toronto Maple Leafs for this upcoming season. No playoff success to speak of in the past couple of years, but every regular season, they've had some really strong performances. So what's different about this year for Toronto? And let's just kick it over to you for the Leafs season preview.
Well, what's different? Well, hopefully they can, make it through the first round of the playoffs for the first time since 2004. I think that's what we're hoping is going to be the different thing. Like that's really what matters. Like for Toronto, most people aren't really going to care what happens through the regular season. Like this team isn't going to be judged until they get to the postseason and until they see, we see some success there. Because this team is good enough to make the playoffs. Are they guaranteed a spot? I don't think so, actually. This is a pretty solid division. But they should contend for one and should get in. And once they do, again, I think unless this team wins a round here in the playoffs, it's going to be really tough for the management to kind of keep going with this roster, keep going with this core, and keep going with their plan. Because this will be 4 or 5 years in a row, I believe, with a first round exit. That's it. Like that's the big thing that everyone's going to be looking at is what does this team do once they get to the playoffs?
Right. My one question about the Leafs really will be what level of goaltending do they get? I'm pretty confident in it though, because of how strong Campbell was at the end of last season. And Mrazek's actually been really good in Carolina. In the past couple of years. So yeah. I think it could even be a big upgrade. Freddie Anderson out and Mrazek in. So if that's one of their questions, that's one of the things that might be different this year versus especially going into last season. I'm big on the Leafs this year. They would not be my number 2 team, but I would have them in the top 3 for the regular season. Speaking of the team that I would have as the number 2 team, let's get over to Ian McLaren, who's going to preview the Boston Bruins season.
What is up, everybody? It's Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, here to answer a few burning questions about this team heading into a new season. One of the biggest storylines for the Boston Bruins is whether or not the cup window is still open. They've lost a lot of core members of this team in the last couple of years. Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, Torrey Krug, David Krejci, and although Rask may be back at some point this season, it's really only Brad Marchand and Patrice Bergeron who remain from the 2011 Cup-winning team. With Bergeron on the last year of his contract, there's some real questions as to whether this team, as constituted, can still compete for a Stanley Cup, or if this is the beginning of the end as they head into an inevitable rebuilding situation. So that's a huge storyline for sure. The Bruins will be successful this season if Charlie Coyle can step up and become a number 2 center, or if they can find one at the trade deadline. That's a huge question mark coming into the season with the departure of David Krejci, is who will play the second line center role, and if it's not Charlie Coyle, then can Jack Studnicka step up as a rookie, or will they have to explore the trade market and add at center for the playoff run? The Bruins will be sunk this season, I think, regardless of that, if they cannot get consistent goaltending from Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. I do think that they are likely to get pretty good goaltending from those guys. Ullmark has put up good numbers over the last couple of seasons as a member of the Buffalo Sabres. And Jeremy Swayman, in very limited time, granted, put up spectacular numbers for the Boston Bruins, going 7-3 with a very impressive save percentage last year. So that will really be key. The Bruins will struggle if they can't find a number 2 center. It's an incredibly important position, and we're going to soon see once again how valuable David Krejci was to this team. And, they will also still be able to stay afloat, I believe, if they can get that kind of goaltending from Linus Ullmark, from Jeremy Swayman. And if Tuukka Rask does come back, then that will be a bonus for the Boston Bruins heading into, the 2022 portion of the season. Now, when it comes to a name that you may not know of that will become a household name by the end of the season, I've already mentioned Jeremy Swayman. I think a lot of people already know about him, but I think he could emerge as a, Calder Trophy candidate, perhaps. I don't know about a Vezina Trophy candidate, but he's very good in net. I think a name a lot of people might still be sleeping on is Matt Grzelcyk. He is a legitimate top pair defenseman in the NHL, and if Bruce Cassidy does deploy him most consistently with Charlie McAvoy, we could see that become one of the best defensive pairings in the NHL. Charlie McAvoy, everybody knows about him. He could be a Norris Trophy candidate at the end of the season and is in line for a huge payday next offseason. But Matt Grzelcyk, kind of a lesser known name, and I really think if he can stay healthy, everybody says that heading into the new season, but it's true. If he can stay healthy, then I think he will become a household name by the end of the season. Now, my official prediction for the Boston Bruins, I mentioned, is their cup window still open? I'm not so sure. Losing David Krejci is massive. Tuukka Rask, perhaps, just as massive. And if he doesn't come back, no disrespect to Ullmark and Swayman, I just don't know if they're at that level. And I think this team probably destined to once again struggle to get out of the second round, especially with the divisional format being back to what it is. And, if they make it through the first round, chances are they'll have to play the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Bruins have not matched up with them well traditionally in recent years. And so my official prediction is they'll be one of the best teams in the East in the regular season, but getting out of the Atlantic with having to go through the Lightning, the Florida Panthers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will all be good. I think that could be a challenge. Anyways, keep up on all things Boston Bruins by subscribing to Locked On Boston Bruins, and we'll see how it all plays out. I'm Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins.
All right, Ian McLaren of Locked On Bruins is previewing the Bruins season there. I've got my Linus Ullmark MVP, or not MVP, Vezina bet for the season. He was plus 4,500 for the Vezina. I can imagine what he would have been for the Hart Trophy. Probably not even listed. But anyways, what's your thoughts on the Bruins coming into the 2021-22 season?
I like the Bruins, but like I said, the same thing last year. Is this the year that age catches up to them? Right? Yeah. Like you got Bergeron, Marchand, like they're all kind of getting up there. Even like Taylor Hall's not a young cat anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And Krejci's
Nick Foligno.
Foligno, they added Nick Foligno. Like Krejci's already gone. Have they replaced Krejci? Are they going to put Foligno in the middle? I don't know. Probably not. But it's going to be interesting to see how they replace Krejci. That's kind of my big question for them this year. How they're going to do that. And yeah, Linus Ullmark, I think, is a good goalie, but also at some point it seems like Tuukka Rask is going to end up coming back to Boston too. So we'll see how that tandem ends up working itself out by the end of the year.
Jeremy Swayman, by the way, has been making waves. Not good for my Ullmark Vezina bet, but Jeremy Swayman, young goalie that was coming through their system the past couple of years, has apparently been playing great in the preseason and in training camp. So even with just Ullmark and Swayman, it might be close to a 50-50 split to start the year.
He had like a 150 goals against or like something stupid like that.
Yeah.
He starts last year. Like he did really well last year towards the end of the season.
And by the way, the answer to your question, at least for what they're going to try to replace David Krejci to start the year, Charlie Coyle has been centering their second line with Taylor Hall on the left and Craig Smith on the right. Eric Haula has been centering the third line with Jake DeBrusk and Nick Foligno. I like Eric Haula as a player. I love his speed. He's one of the best skaters in the league, but the guy just cannot stay healthy. So like at the end of the day, even if he does stay healthy, his ceiling's limited anyway. So if Coyle is your plan to replace Krejci, then they might have a tough time. They really might have a tough time doing it. All right, so there's the Boston Bruins preview there for you. And before we take a timeout and get to some of the other teams in the Atlantic Division, we want to talk to you about rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more on the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store and $216 from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They got everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So we encourage you to go check it out. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
Hello, I'm Scott Cullen, host of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, with a look at the Atlantic Division. It looks like a division that has 5 teams in contention for playoff spots. You've got the Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs, and probably the Montreal Canadiens, hoping they're not left out after making a run to the Stanley Cup final last season. But you can probably look at the Ottawa Senators, Detroit Red Wings, and Buffalo Sabres as teams that have a ways to go before they close the gap on the playoff contenders. Now, player in this division that I would have to have for fantasy, how about Sam Reinhardt of the Florida Panthers? He scored 25 goals on the sinking ship in Buffalo last season, and Reinhardt does have a chance to play on Florida's top line with Alexander Barkov. That's a spot that worked out really well for Carter Verhaeghe last season, and Reinhardt is even better than Verhaeghe. A player that I might avoid from this division would be Brendan Gallagher, the Montreal Canadiens. Now, he might be the heartbeat of the Habs, and his hard-driving style of play, though, it does tend to lead to injuries, and Gallagher saw his ice time go down last season. And so, given some questions about Montreal's offense to begin with, I would be wary about taking Brendan Gallagher. And now, a player who might have some surprise value this season is Detroit's Dylan Larkin. Larkin really had a rough go on the percentages last season in terms of his shooting percentage and on-ice shooting percentage, and so he's likely facing some statistical regression in his favor for this coming season. And so even though they lost Jakub Vrana for 4 months, and that doesn't help him in any way, it's still a pretty good bet that Larkin is going to score at a better rate than 23 points in 44 games like he had last season. Now, if we're looking at a team that is most loaded in this division, well, no surprise, it is the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. They have the number one goaltender, Andrei Vasilevsky. Defenseman Victor Hedman is in the top 2 or 3 at the position. Right winger Nikita Kucherov is the top 5 pick overall and one of the few players in the league for whom 100 points is a reasonable expectation coming into the season. Add in Braden Point, Steven Stamkos, and really, it's an embarrassment of riches. Other teams just don't have this kind of high-end talent. Now, a team that you might need to avoid in this division, well, no surprise again, it's the Buffalo Sabres. Until the Jack Eichel situation is resolved, the Sabres are lacking in real fantasy value, and I don't know that an Eichel trade necessarily would fix it immediately either. But you look at, they don't really have viable fantasy options in goal right now. On defense, they're looking for Rasmus Dahlin to have a bounce-back season. At forward, Victor Olofsson might have the most immediate value. Jeff Skinner's trying to bounce back from 2 down seasons for the Sabres. And then young guys like Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestat, they have potential that might pay off in the long run, but they haven't really proven that they can do it in the National Hockey League yet. So it could be a pretty rough season for the Buffalo Sabres.
Joe DiBiase and Mike DiStefano here on the Locked On NHL podcast. Our Atlantic Division season preview rolls along with the Florida Panthers.
This is Armando Velez from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast to discuss the preseason stories based on the Florida Panthers. So the biggest storyline heading into the Florida Panthers offseason coming into this season is that the Florida Panthers are straight up going for it. They gave up a first-round pick in acquiring the center/winger from the Buffalo Sabres in Sam Reinhardt, and they gave a second-round pick in next year's NHL entry draft from the previous trade deadline in Sam Bennett. So the Florida Panthers are putting all their chips forward. So the acquisition of Sam Reinhardt was the biggest one of this offseason. This team will be successful if the first line of Alexander Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe, and Sam Reinhardt are able to mesh with each other. Alexander Barkov was able to win the Selke Trophy last year for his great two-way play last year. Sam Reinhardt's play did improve when Jack Eichel did go down last season for the Buffalo Sabres. So how does Sam Reinhardt fit playing along with other superstars for the Florida Panthers? For the team to be unsuccessful, this one is a little obvious one for me. The way this team will be not successful next year is if the goalie tandem isn't to what the Florida Panthers are expecting. Spencer Knight went 4-0-0 in his 4 starts last season. Still a very small sample size for the young 2019 first-round pick from the 2019 NHL entry draft. Has a lot of promise. Started the last 2 games of the Florida Panthers playoffs last year, including the Game 6 elimination, which is still his only loss. And the $10 million man in Sergei Bobrovsky. The first 2 years of Sergei Bobrovsky's 7-year, $70 million contract were just very underwhelming. It did not look like his Vezina Trophy winning days for the Columbus Blue Jackets at the time. So how does Sergei Bobrovsky improve? If the way Joe Quenneville wants this goalie tandem to work is for Bobrovsky to get the majority of the starts, as he is in his 3rd year of his 7-year deal, to mentor Spencer Knight as he has 2 years left on his ELC, and mentor him, maybe go for a 60-40, but if the performance isn't there to even close to Vezina caliber play, or even getting an under 3 goals goals against average for Sergei Bobrovsky, then Coach Q would have no choice but to put Spencer Knight in the majority of the starts for the Florida Panthers. And that puts the rookie into a very tough position as far as the Florida Panthers having these Stanley Cup aspirations for this coming season, which this team hasn't won a playoff series since 1996, and you're putting a rookie in to carry the load. And if the $10 million man in Sergei Bobrovsky can't live up to that contract, then you're putting a lot of pressure on a 20-year-old kid. He's still a kid at the end of the day. And fourth question is, who is relatively unknown player on your team who could be a household name by season's end, and why? And for me, the answer is Mackenzie Wieger. Mackenzie Wieger stepped up big time in last year in the absence of Aaron Ekblad when Aaron Ekblad went down against Dallas in late March with a fractured leg. Mackenzie Wieger was still on the top pairing. He was pairing with Aaron Ekblad, and he still performed to a level that which Mackenzie Wieger was still able to get Norris Trophy votes. He didn't become a finalist or even didn't win it, but he had much consideration for the Norris Trophy, and he was able to score, and he will be what looks like right now the new quarterback on the power play, with now Keith Yandel not being in the mix anymore for the Florida Panthers. And my official prediction for the Florida Panthers on how their season will end is they will finally win a playoff series for the first time since 1996, and they will be either a second or third round exit in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. They're not ready for the big stage yet for the Stanley Cup final, but they will be taking a step this season in getting there, and they will be building to be a contender for many years to come.
All right, Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers previewing the Florida Panthers season for the upcoming year. Their over-under point total is above 100 points. There are a lot of expectations on the Panthers this season. Does any part of you just think, though, but they're the Florida Panthers? Like, there's still that element of them that they're hard to trust almost, and it's not their fault. It's just like the mantra of their team really over the years. But up and down the roster, I really like Florida.
So are you saying that are you saying this is the new New York Islanders? Is this your new Islanders where this team,
yeah,
they're playing well and you're just going to doubt them every bit of the way? The only difference, the Islanders had a crappy roster on paper, whereas Florida's roster looks great. Like, this looks like a killer roster, and apparently they might end up getting Barkov signed before the season starts, which would be huge if they could get that dealt with. I like this team. I like this roster. I think that young goalie is going to end up getting Spencer Knight. He's going to end up getting a good bulk of starts here. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with that goalie situation, what's going to happen with that money that's on the books for Bobrovsky, but Spencer Knight is the guy, and if he's as good as he looked last year in his small sample size, I think they got themselves an absolute stud. Then you couple that with Huberdeau, and they went out, they signed Connor Verhaeghe. They went out and they traded for Sam Reinhardt. Sam Bennett looked like a totally new player when he got there last year. He re-upped for a couple more years here. So I like what they're doing over in Florida. So they're definitely going to give the Bostons and the Torontos a run for their money.
Didn't even mention they added the active point leader in the National Hockey League. Jumbo Joe is in Florida this year.
That's right. And
I was laughing about that earlier. Was he shot last year? What did you see in Toronto from him?
Yeah,
or is he?
Yeah, he's
pretty shot.
I mean, he was playing fourth line. He was playing on the top line at times, but it was every third line, he was sitting on the bench, and Hyman was coming out for a shift, so he wasn't even playing all that. You'd have Matthews and Marner up in the 21, 22, 23 minutes a game, and Jumbo would still be kicking around 12, 13 because he just he wasn't going out there every shift. He'd hang back a little bit, and that was really it. So he'll give you some fourth line minutes. He'll give you 10, 11 minutes maybe of his best hockey of the night, and call her a day. But Joe Thornton isn't going to be helping anybody the way that he used to, at the very least.
Right. They're so far. So I'm looking at their lines from their last practice, and they're very evenly spread out throughout the lineup. So they've separated Huberdeau and Barkov. Barkov's been skating with Reinhardt and Verhaeghe. Huberdeau is kind of maybe going to be running his own line. He's got Sam Bennett and Owen Tippett to his right. Thornton, who I mentioned before, is paired with Anthony Duclair, and then Mason Marchment. And then it's listed as their fourth line, but Nola Chari, Frank Vetrano, and Patrick Hornquist, like that's some team's second line. And I think that's going to be more of the third line when you boil it down to ice time when their season starts, because Vetrano has scored 20 goals in this league. Hornquist has scored 20 goals in this league, and Achari is not bad in the center position either. And Ekblad back healthy this year, paired with Mackenzie Wieger. That could be a really strong top pair for the Panthers.
Is he still underrated, or is he now, like, people are well aware of Mackenzie Wieger now?
I would still say he's pretty underrated. I think among
get to know him then, folks. Get to know him. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not familiar with Mackenzie Wieger, make sure you know who this guy is. If you're a fantasy hockey player, make sure you know that Mackenzie Wieger is a player, a defenseman that you're going to want to add in your league, specifically if you're in a multi-category fantasy hockey league.
Yes. All right. Next up in our Atlantic Division season preview, the Montreal Canadiens.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. It is Scott Matla from Locked On Canadiens, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, and I am bringing you our keys to success and other predictions for this year's Montreal Canadiens team. And obviously, the team went to the Stanley Cup final last year on an impromptu run. Carey Price was amazing. Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield announced themselves to the NHL. And the biggest storyline facing the team this year is what is remaining from that deep run. It took a lot out of the team. Can they find their replacements for Phillip Danault, who left in free agency, and for Shea Weber, who might never play again? We don't quite know if Carey Price is ready to start the season. What does this mean for the Montreal Canadiens? Can they avoid the burden of expectations after a deep run here, a surprisingly deep run that many people did think they were going to go on, myself included, and especially after they went down 3-1 to Toronto? And have the Canadiens done enough to replace Shea Weber for the time being? Have they done enough to replace Phillip Danault? Have they brought in enough pieces to get them to that next level they needed to be? And that is obviously the biggest storyline facing the team. And the key to success is, can Carey Price and Jake Allen be as good as they were last year? Carey Price in his playoff form and Jake Allen carrying the load while Price was out injured during the regular season. If Carey Price can give us some of what we saw in the playoffs and not having to start 60, 65 games, that's why Jake Allen is here, and he gives Montreal those kind of numbers, Montreal should be laughing their way into the playoffs, because Carey Price, when he's playing like he was in the postseason, is the best goalie in the world. If he's good to go and Jake Allen's good to go to help back him up in a 1A, 1B, they are cruising. And the other key to success, can Nick Suzuki take another step forward? What does Jake Evans have in a full NHL season as a third or fourth line center? And what can Cole Caulfield do in a full NHL season? We saw how good he was in the playoffs last year. He has a full year now. He's found instant chemistry with Nick Suzuki. He should make that power play extremely lethal. And what players are going to step up in the absence of Shea Weber in terms of leadership on and off the ice? And for everything to go wrong, if we're looking at them completely falling apart this year, if the defense can't keep up, David Savard hasn't had the most impressive of preseasons. Joel Edmondson's a little banged up right now, and they're missing Shea Weber. We keep saying it. That's the biggest storyline on this team. They brought in these pieces to try and replace him bit by bit. David Savard's going to have a big chunk of minutes there. So is Ben Sherratt. We know Jeff Petrie is good. We know Joel Edmondson and Jeff Petrie are good. They need other players to step up now. They need Alexander Romanov to take a step up. They need Brett Kulak to be more consistent. If Chris Weidman can provide some offense on their bottom pairing, they're kind of laughing. They signed Sami Niku for league minimum, and unfortunately, he is out injured after a hit in a preseason game, and they're going to hope that there's some value to be found there. And they can also struggle if they don't find that Phillip Danault replacement. If they do, in Christian Dvorak, which it looks like they might have right now, they should be fine in that category. But there's a lot of potential things that could go wrong for them if all these pieces they brought in just do not mesh together. And if we're talking unknown players that are going to become a household name around the NHL, I think Joel Armia is that guy. He's had moments in the playoffs and in previous years where he goes on a hot streak and looks absolutely unstoppable. He's looked very good in the preseason. He's looked very good in camp, but he was very good in the playoffs last year. I think before long, he's going to become a name that a lot of Canadiens fans are mentioning as a very crucial part of this team right now. And it's kind of hard to pick because there's a lot of recognizable names, but Joel Armia is just that guy. He can play all over the lineup. Any situation, he's going to give you the best every single night. And as for my prediction, Montreal plays in arguably one of the toughest divisions in the NHL. There's 4 very good teams in front of them. Tampa, Florida, Boston, and Toronto are all very good. The Canadiens are going to have to be just as good, if not better, this year. If everything clicks and they are rolling on all cylinders like they were in the playoffs, then I think they'll make it. I think they're going to be just on the fringe there. They're going to be a wild card team at best this season, and they're not going to be able to have those 8-game losing streaks or those struggles like they've had before. I've been Scott Matla with Locked On Canadiens. You can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens and listen to us wherever you get your daily podcasts.
All right, there's our season preview of the Montreal Canadiens. They had Christian Dvorak in the offseason. Obviously, they had a tumultuous offseason when it came to the NHL draft. Not that it impacts this season anyway. Stanley Cup final last year. That's going to be a high bar to meet. And, Mike, I don't think they really will even come close to meeting that bar that they set last year.
No, there's a strong possibility that they don't even make the playoffs. Like, if we're saying that we believe that Tampa's going to make it, probably Boston, Florida has a good shot, so does Toronto. I mean, the odds of 5 players or 5 teams from the Atlantic making the playoffs, I think are slim. And I think that the Montreal Canadiens are just going to find themselves on the outside looking in. I don't think they're in as dire as most people are saying. Like, I find that now a lot of people online are trying to say that they're terrible. Like, they're going to go from, first to worst type of fall from grace. I don't think that's going to be the case. They're still an extremely deep team. And as amazing as a player as Shea Weber was, he wasn't the Shea Weber that he was when he was like in Nashville or even his first couple of years in Montreal. Like, not that he's easily replaceable, but he's not like this absolute stud all around defenseman anymore. So the drop off from like him to David Savard, which is the player who they went out and will effectively take over his positioning, isn't as great as like the name value suggests, in my opinion. So I don't think there's as big of a drop off. Carey Price probably going to be good to go pretty early in the year. If not, Jake Allen did well. I thought in his spot starts that he had. And then I think Dvorak's actually a better player than Kotkaniemi. So they actually got a little bit better in that regard. They got Jonathan Drouin coming back. I honestly quite like what Montreal has and what they got going for them. I just think that they're in a tough division and the Eastern Conference is quite loaded. They're going to be battling for one of those wild card spots and will probably end up coming up just a tad short.
I agree. I think they'll probably miss the playoffs, but they'll probably be like last year, which was they're going to be fighting for the playoffs to the very end. And if they make it, they're going to need Carey Price to be the best goaltender in the world to have any chance of winning series. That's the Canadiens' blueprint, I think, going into the year. All right, before we get to the bottom feeders of the Atlantic Division, including my Buffalo Sabres, we want to tell you about Bet Online. Bet Online's back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. And as always, Bet Online's your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. But of course, hockey too. New updated website, new interface, even more odds, props, contests. Bet Online continues to be the number one source for everything football, but of course, hockey as well. Use the promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. When you head to their website and you use the mobile device to sign up today, you receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So don't forget, that's the promo code Locked On. From football, basketball, boxing, big fight coming this Saturday in the heavyweight division, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I got to tell you, Joe, I used BetOnline this weekend, put in a nice little 5-leg parlay, just cashed out as the Chargers defeated the Raiders on Monday Night Football, covered the spread.
Right.
5-leg parlay. Let's go.
Wow.
Thank you, BetOnline.
Who did you have? You hit on all 5?
I hit on all 5. I went and bet early. Sometime make sure you see the early lines here. So I was able to get the Chiefs at 5.5. That was the early line from last week. Chargers were -3. The Browns were -1. And I don't know if you remember this, but the Baltimore Ravens were actually the 1.5-point dogs going into last week against the Broncos. So I hammered on that one. And I had the Cincinnati Bengals money line, which was clutch because they didn't cover, but they got the money line victory. So all 5 of those, money. 5 for 4. Hit the party.
All right. Well done. Well done on that one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, before I suck us into the hours of gambling talk, which could easily be done here, let's start with our bottom feeders here. The season preview for the Detroit Red Wings.
This is Nolan Bianchi with the Locked On Red Wings podcast for your season preview on the Detroit Red Wings. What is the biggest storyline to watch for this season? Well, it is quite easy. The development of the young stars coming into the pipeline for Detroit. This is a year that a lot of Detroit's future is going to start making their way into the lineup for the Red Wings. A very exciting year after multiple years in the toilet, multiple years with nothing really to look forward to in these games besides how does Dylan Larkin look? How does Philip Zadina look? And a lot of these games this year are going to be kind of based around the same thing. How does the future look? It's going to be less concerned with wins and losses than most teams in this league. And quite frankly, if they do end up with a bunch of losses, but the young kids do take a step forward, well, that'll be considered a plus. Lucas Raymond is going to be making his NHL debut this year, the 4th overall pick in 2020. Moritz Seider is going to be making his NHL debut this year, the 6th overall pick in 2019. Jonathan Berggren, 2nd-round pick in 2018. The Red Wings should be very excited about. Killed it over in the SHL last year. Looks like he might make his way up. Joe Veleno is another guy drafted in the 1st round of that 2018 draft alongside Philip Zadina. All of those guys really are guys to watch for this season, and just how do they play on a personal level. This is not going to be a big wins and losses season for the Red Wings. And like I said, if they do end up with a bunch of losses, but those guys do take a step forward, all things considered, I think that's a pretty positive development. Realistically, they could follow a similar track to the Detroit Pistons this year. The Detroit Pistons had a very exciting season, only won 20 games, but it ended up okay. They ended up winning the lottery. Now they are really off and running in their rebuild. This will be a successful year if that happens, if those kids do take a step forward. But I like to see them string together some wins. I'm not one of those guys who comes out and says you either have to be tanking or contending after so many years of losing, especially the 1920 season. We all know about that one. One of the worst, if not the worst in franchise history, at least statistically the worst in the salary cap era. There's been a lot of losing on this team over these last couple of years. And quite frankly, I don't think it's good for the older pieces of the core who have been here during some of that time to go through another season like that again. So guys like Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, Philip Hronek, who run that 1920 team. I would like to see the Red Wings rattle off a couple win streaks this year. Nothing crazy. The 3-game win streak, 4-game win streak. If they have either one of those this year, I think all things considered, that would be a success. This will be an unsuccessful season if Philip Zadina does not start to put the puck in the net. Philip Zadina, very high on him. Some people have criticized me because they think I'm too hard on him. I love Philip Zadina. He turned around his 2-way game last year, and really all that's left is to start working on that shot. He is probably the prospect we're interested in most in terms of guys who have been on the NHL or at the NHL level for a couple of years now. He had his first full season last year. He should be a first-line player again this year, and that'll be something to watch for. Again, not too much can really go wrong for this team, and so you're just looking for those kids to develop. And it will be an unsuccessful season if Moritz Seider can't hack it in the NHL. I don't think that's going to happen. It will be an unsuccessful season if Lucas Raymond can't hack it in the NHL, and they still continue to lose, and the veterans don't look good. And you just really, as a whole, is this team creeping towards being a Stanley Cup contender? That is really what you're looking for. A relatively unknown player who could be a household name by season's end, Jonathan Berggren. I'm going to go with him. He was one of the top scorers in the SHL last season. He was a second-round pick by the Red Wings in 2018. Relatively unknown because he suffered through a lot of injuries and whatnot. Comes out last year as a top 10 scorer in the SHL. Just an electrifying player. He's going to make the highlight reel a lot, and I do believe that if he's able to get up in Detroit for an extended stay, make himself comfortable, he could be a guy who ends up standing out for this team this year. And my official prediction for this Red Wings team, and this might be a little bit of an ideal, but I'm a guy who makes my wishes based on ideals. I've said it all offseason. Here's what you want to do if you're this year's Detroit Red Wings. You want to play well enough to be within 5 games of a playoff spot at the deadline. Obviously not enough to go by because you don't want to mortgage the future. Then you want to fade away late after you trade away a couple pieces, start to sputter towards the end and finish with somewhere the 3rd to 7th best lottery odds. I know that's pretty specific, but I think honestly, that is the season that the Red Wings should expect to have. I do expect them to have a much better first half than second half because of that. And I do expect them to pick up more wins than they have in years past. Make it interesting. I don't think they'll ever really be in contention for a playoff spot, but I think there will be a certain point where throughout the season, maybe December, maybe January, you'll go, oh, the Red Wings. And then, like I said, they'll fall away late. So that is what I'm hoping for the Detroit Red Wings this season. Those are my predictions for this season, and that's everything to watch for if you're going to keep an eye on Detroit this season.
All right, preview of the Detroit Red Wings upcoming season. Maybe the first time in a while that Red Wings fans are optimistic that there could be a step forward here. They haven't made the playoffs in a while. Kind of been a bit of a rebuild. Steve Yzerman got his hand on the keys. He's got his hands on the steering wheel now. I'm not thinking though that they're ready just yet. I like what Yzerman's building there. I loved the Jacob Vrana pickup last year, but he's now injured for, I think, 4 to 6 months. Like, he's going to be out for a while. So one of the big additions I liked at the end of last year is not there for them. I still think this team is talent-wise pretty underwhelming, and I think they deserve to be down here at the bottom.
Absolutely. Like, this team isn't making the playoffs. Like, let's be honest here. This is not a playoff team. They'll be right there at the bottom again in the bottom 5, much like they've been the last few seasons. They made a great deal to pick up Alex Nedeljkovic, but
right,
what Nedeljkovic are we going to see? Because the team, the well-structured team, the well-balanced team in front of him in Carolina, vastly different than the lineup that's going to be in front of him in Detroit. So I'll be curious to see how that works out for the Detroit Red Wings this season, but they're clearly banking on him being a big part of their future. I do like kids like Mo Seider. I think he's going to be an absolute stud.
Yes.
Lucas Raymond, Zadina. Like, they've got some young pieces, but I still think that they're a couple of ways from being competitive within the division.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next up is the Ottawa Senators.
Hey everyone, Ross Levitan here with the Locked On Senators podcast alongside Brandon Pillar to discuss a season preview that includes a breakout player to watch, what would qualify as a successful season, and what would have to happen for it to go off the rails. But first, Pilsy, let's start with our biggest storyline at Senators training camp.
Well, if Brady Tkachuk still is unsigned, and let's assume that he does sign, then we have to look at who will be this team's second line center. Now, fans, they want it to be Shane Pinto, the new kid. He had a great showing in between Tim Stützle and Connor Brown last season, but DJ Smith looking like he's going to give Chris Tiernan the opportunity to start there. But this is going to be a battle we're going to be watching all season long. And for us, we think Shane Pinto has more than deserved his chance as second line center.
7 points in 12 games after signing out of North Dakota, where he was a Hobey Baker finalist. So plenty of intrigue surrounding Shane Pinto, but also in between the crease, Pilsy. And that's where you're going to discuss what would make this season a success for Ottawa.
Well, we're a goalie-friendly show, Ross. So if this team's going to have success, we need a bounce-back season from Matt Murray. He was one of the most inconsistent, worst numbers of the entire league as far as goaltending goes. So we need him to get back to that short stretch of games where he was one of the best goalies in the league for a short time. But if he can stay consistent and bring back that caliber of goaltending that he had as a Stanley Cup champion twice with the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Senators could have a lot of success built off that.
We had a joke going on our show that he was inconsistently consistent because it was good start, bad start, good start, bad start. But now Ottawa has changed goalie coaches. And could that be the answer? It certainly started that way with great 5-game sample size, however, not very large, and injuries on either side. So stay healthy, stay consistent, Matt Murray. But if things fall off the rails, which they have in years past, only the Detroit Red Wings have a worse combined record than Ottawa over the last 4 seasons. What do you believe the organization will be able to point to say, oh man, that's where it went wrong?
Well, last season, Ross, they won exactly 0 games on the second half of back-to-back matchups, and they've got their work cut out for them. They have 12 more back-to-backs this season, and if they end up losing all 12 of those second half games, that's way too many points to give up, and they're going to have no chance at playoff contention if that happens. So they need to improve on the second half of their back-to-back games this season.
They were 0-8-2 last year in those situations. Must improve. You're right about that, Pilsy. Speaking of improvement, which relatively unknown Senator do you believe is poised for a breakout year to become a household name?
Well, if you're a Locked On Senators fan, he's not unknown to you because he was a guest on our show last Friday. But if you're not a Sens fan, you might be looking at Alex Formenton's stats and being like, this is a breakout candidate. Well, don't blink because you might miss him. Flash Formenton is one of the fastest players in the NHL. He's got size, speed, and skill, and look out for him to make a big name for himself this season.
Had a 20-game stint last year, scored 4 goals, but Pilsy, this guy lit it up in front of you and I in Belleville, 27 goals down there and only getting better and better. The second-round pick in 2017. Great kid, too, so go check out that interview. All right, now, finally, before we get to the finally, though, Artem Zub, another guy to keep a name out for, KHL star, Olympic gold medalist. That guy is poised to break out, looking like he's going to start the year next to Thomas Chabot, a real stabilizing presence on the back end. Okay, Pills, you got about a minute left here for a final prediction for this Senators record.
Well, they're in a new division, or should I say back to their old division this year, which is going to make things tough on them because there are a lot of good teams, but also there's a couple basement dweller teams too. So I'm looking for the Ottawa Senators to finish ahead of the Detroit Red Wings and Buffalo Sabres, but just behind the Montreal Canadiens and not able to get a playoff spot just yet. I'm going to say their record is somewhere around 36-36-10.
Oh, that wouldn't be good for playoffs at all. However, I'm going to stick with you that this year isn't the one for playoffs. Maybe next year once Jake Sanderson gets in the fold. But I will say, despite missing the playoffs, I believe they will finish ahead of Montreal. They'll be in the playoff race down to maybe the last 2-3 weeks. I see them finishing ahead of Montreal, Detroit, and Buffalo in the division. We'll be Locked On Senators Monday through Friday. We hope you join us wherever you download your podcast or on YouTube. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. We've got your team every day.
All right, season preview for the Ottawa Senators. Mike, what's your feeling on the Sens going into this upcoming season?
Yeah, Ross does great things with the Sens. Him and
Yep.
Brandon. They do good things. Pillsy, good cat. But look, at the end of the day, they're not going to be a playoff team. I mean, I think they're going to shock some people. Actually, like I would put the Senators ahead of Detroit, like 100%. Okay. Does BetOnline have Detroit ahead of them in the odds?
They are. Hold on, just add it up. Senators are at 74.5. And the Red Wings are at 77.5. So close, but Detroit is above them.
So I'm hammering the under on Detroit and maybe even the over on Ottawa. It's a good line on Ottawa, but the Detroit, I'm hammering the under there. But the Ottawa Senators, I like the young pieces. It's similar to Detroit. except I think they just have more of them and they're somewhat ready. The problem is, like, is Brady Tkachuk going to sign that contract right before the season starts? I mean, if Brady Tkachuk pulls a William Nylander and he's out until December 1st, then this team's going to struggle, right? Like, he's their best forward. Like, Tim Stützle, I guess, could put in terms of like being a skilled forward. Timmy Stu probably will definitely contend in that regard.
Maybe Josh Norris could take a step forward this year and in year 2 for him. But
I like Josh Norris. Yeah, Drake Matherson's another good young player. Shane Pinto is somebody who I think also is going to be one of those names that people don't quite know just yet, but by mid-season, you'll know the name Shane Pinto, especially, if you're in this division. I think they're a good young group, but to me, it's going to come down to, can that goaltending rebound from a poor season last year? Can Matt Murray be a $6 million goaltender? I'm not a believer, but that's really going to be the only way that this team does anything and does make it interesting come, March, April, May of next year is if Matt Murray rebounds and becomes like that same goaltender he was back when he led Pittsburgh to back-to-back cups.
Yep, completely agree. And I think they're going to have a tough time replacing Tkachuk's production because part of, I think, what they're...
he'll sign, though. Like, I do believe he'll end up.
You think he'll sign?
Yeah, I do. So
I think part of what their step forward would look like is Tkachuk continues to be the leader offensively, and you get steps forward from Norris and Batherson and Stützle, and that is kind of what contributes to Ottawa hitting that over on that 74.5 number, and maybe even being in a playoff race. I can't see them making the playoffs, but could I see them kind of hanging around until the month of March? Like, I think you need all of those guys probably to take at least some step forward, and like you're saying, you would need Murray. He doesn't need to be a $6 million goaltender, but can he at least be like a $3 million goaltender?
Yeah, because he wasn't that last year.
No, he was.
Or the year before when they traded for him. If you took a look at his goal saved above average, it was legitimately dead last in the league.
Right. So not surprising at all.
They traded for him and gave him a $6 million contract. Yeah, the same season that he had the worst goal saved above average in the league.
It's going to be tough, even if they get steps forward from a lot of these guys. For me, you can't trust the goaltending. But we'll see. Maybe some of those players will take a big enough step forward to where it can offset it a bit.
Goaltending.
Yeah. What's that?
Speaking of goaltending,
is this a transition? You want me to talk about the Sabres goaltending?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, not good. Not good. I trust Ottawa's goaltending more than I trust Buffalo. Here is the Buffalo Sabres season preview, courtesy of me, Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres. I'll get to the goaltending in a second, but the biggest storyline really to watch for the Sabres this season is just, what do the kids do? Because there's no expectations for this team to win games. There's really no realistic outcome in which they win games this year or in a playoff race. Like we just mentioned, even Ottawa has the potential to be in. I can't see them being alive past the month of December. I don't think it's in the cards. And part of the reason is, yes, their goaltending situation. I think the hope was that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who has been a strong goalie prospect, the Hockey News last year rated him as the number 2 goalie prospect in the world that was not yet in the NHL behind Spencer Knight. But even though the Sabres kind of cleared the path, like they wanted him to win the job, I don't know, they weren't expecting him to, but they gave him every opportunity to do it. He's played more than anybody in the preseason, and it's gone very poorly. He started with 2 really strong periods last Thursday night. And then since, I believe he's allowed 10 goals in 4 periods. It's been pretty rough. So he doesn't look to be ready. He's bound for Rochester to start the year, which means 40-year-old Craig Anderson, who was ready to retire. Literally, the Capitals had announced that he was retiring. He's probably your 1A. And Aaron Dell, who's at best a betweener between the NHL and the AHL. Probably most teams' number 3 goalie in the league. He's going to be your 1B. That's tough. So we know really how underwhelming the group is in front of those netminders, but they're not going to bail out this team at all. But again, I think the season is about the kids, and a successful season to me would be, no, the team's not going to be good, but Dylan Cousins looks like a legitimate top 6 center, and Casey Middlestat does the same thing. And Tage Thompson looks like he can continue along the track that he ended at last year, looking like a 20-goal scorer in your middle 6. Rasmus Asplund. Like, you've got some of these, second-tier prospects that have been developing in the organization that have now arrived that are just really starting out as regulars. And what do they look like? Because the primary prospects, they're really not here. Like, Owen Power is going back to Michigan. And honestly, JJ Peterka, who was a second-round pick of theirs last year, he is the best forward prospect to me in the organization. He looks awesome. But he's not going to be in Buffalo to start the year. And whoever you pick in the first round next year is also going to outrank probably anybody else that you get, that you currently have in the system, plus anybody that you might get for a Jack Eichel trade if that ever decides to happen. To me, you've got kind of the secondary core pieces that are in place now. You don't yet have the meat of what you're going to be building around. I think that's still on the way. So it's really just about the evaluation of those young kids. And that's what the beginning of a rebuild is. And even though the last build failed, I think you still have to call this a rebuild, even though, again, they're not really building from anything. And that's how I think it looks at the beginning. So that's really the Sabres. And then real quick, a relatively unknown player on the team that I think could be a household name by the end of the season. I think that's going to be JJ Peterka. I don't think he's going to start the year in Buffalo, but I think he's going to make it here at the midpoint. Preseason, he looks awesome. For Team Germany last year at the World Juniors, he looked awesome.
He's back in North America.
He's in North America. The Sabres signed him to an entry-level contract away from Red Bull Munich in the German league. So he's going to start the year in Rochester, but for how good he's looked, he's big, he's fast, his hands are way quicker than I thought that they were. I think by the end of the year, you're going to look at him as not, I hesitate to call him a building block, but I think you'll look at him as a legitimate top 6 winger and maybe a top line winger, potentially. Because right now the draft status is still what you'll think about for him, 2nd-round pick. And my official prediction on how the Sabres season will end, I think they will finish dead last. I think they'll be in a race with the Coyotes, who are starting Carter Hutton in net. For as bad as Craig Anderson is, they're starting Carter Hutton. It's like it's 5 years ago all over again. Sabres and the Coyotes battling for last when you've got a superstar prospect on the way in Shane Wright. So that's the Sabres season in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. I mean, you're as plugged in as anyone else on the network when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres. So, I mean, I'm with you. I think that this is going to be a tough season. And I mean, the real big question mark, I would say, for Buffalo is like, what happens with Jack Eichel, man?
Mm-hmm.
When does that situation get sorted out? Like, has he played his final game in a Buffalo Sabres uniform? You'd think. But if that's the case, why are we delaying any type of move? Like, what is going on here, Joe?
I think it's such a stalemate because Eichel won't get the surgery the Sabres recommend. The Sabres won't let him get the surgery that he wants. Nobody's going to trade for him until they know what's happening with the neck. And the Sabres just a week, like 3 days ago, finally decided to let other teams see his medicals. So maybe that's a small step forward. And even the league, like today, Gary Bettman's making comments like everyone's doing everything that they're within their rights. Like no one's at blame here. So the league's not really stepping up and mediating here. So I don't know. I think the result that makes the most sense is the Sabres, who I think neither side wants to see him in a Sabre uniform again. So if you want to prove to other teams he's still Jack Eichel, it still blows my mind that the Sabres, who know Eichel's never going to get the surgery you want anyway, don't just let him get his surgery. It's a short timetable for return. He could be on the ice with Team USA at Beijing. And sure, it could go poorly. It could look like he's not ready, and that could hurt his trade value. But to me, it's already hurt. So, like, what are you really risking? And the upside is, if he goes to Beijing, and he's an important member of Team USA as a likely second-line center behind Austin Matthews, still a key member of that team, and he looks great, you're only going to increase the trade market. But the Sabres just don't have, it seems, any motivation to want to do that. My guess is, honestly, Eichel is just going to go get the surgery. He's not going to have permission to do it. He's going to have to pay for it out of his own pocket. And he's just going to say, screw it. I need to get my hockey career back on track. I'm going and getting the surgery I want. Your move, Sabres. You do what you need to do. But I needed to do this.
Wow.
I don't know what else happens. I don't know what else happens. No one's trading for him. So
yeah, no, like I mean that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that you brought up the fact of like him going to the Olympics could increase his trade value because I mean even if he doesn't play for Buffalo again, at least a strong tournament, a strong Olympic tournament could kind of reinforce like, oh right, this guy's one of the best players in the NHL because he is. Like when Eichel is playing, like he's arguably a top 10 talent in the league who plays the center position, the most premier position in the league. So, I mean, if that is the case and he goes off and he has a terrific Olympic run, that hugely benefits the Sabres when they're trying to look to try and move him for something. Because I guarantee you see LA or New York or one of these teams are going to be looking. They're going to say, man, we could really use that right now. Like, I forgot how good he was because he hasn't played in 18 months. And then they're going to go, all right, screw it. Let's pull the trigger. Let's bring him into the building. He's here for the next 5 years anyways. Let's just get it done. Like, I feel like that could definitely be, like, that's the next checkpoint, I think. If he's not traded by, like, the end of training camp, which at this point I doubt it, it's probably going to be after the Olympics.
Yep. And so few teams now have the cap capability of even doing it.
Yeah, there's that too.
Tampa, you can trade him to Tampa. They'll stash him on LTIR. They'll be happy with that. Just play him for game 1 of the playoffs. But yeah. All right, so that's the Sabres and plenty more fun topics like that over at Locked On Sabres.
I never did really go through my entire like Maple Leafs preview.
Sure.
Let me quickly go through it.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So like the biggest single storyline, I mean, that's the same. Like they need to make it past the first round. The regular season really doesn't matter that much. The amount of success they have in the regular season, they can win the division and it doesn't matter unless they win in the playoffs. Like that's what everybody in the city cares about. So in order for this to be a success, well, refer to question 1. They need to win in the playoffs. They need to win a round in the playoffs, maybe even a couple of rounds. But also from a player perspective, I think they need to continue to take leaps and continue that maturation process that we saw kind of start to occur last year, right? You saw Austin Matthews take that next step into being a two-way force. Even William Nylander started to mature a little bit in his game and play a little more two-way, especially late in the season than into the playoffs. Hopefully you get to see that maturation of guys like Rasmus Sandin, Travis Dermott, some young guys who could come up. Maybe Nick Robertson ends up playing well and playing his way onto this team. So I think that and finding consistency on a night-to-night basis for these guys, that could also become something that would be successful from a player standpoint. Unsuccessful, I mean, first round elimination. I'd refer to question 1 again. But when we're talking about some players who are going to be relatively unknown, a guy who I'm curious to see how much you are familiar with him or if you've heard anything about him, but Michael Bunting. Michael Bunting is a guy who Leafs fans are fawning over right now. And it seems like he's going to get an opportunity, a little bit of a run here in the top 6 next to Nylander and Tavares. He scored 4 goals already in the preseason. He had 10 goals last year in Arizona in the final 21 games of the season, all of which basically scored in and around the net. He's got unbelievable hands around the net. So the thought process is you put him with a couple of high-volume shooters, and he's a little bit of a pest, somewhat of like a Zach Hyman light-ish type player. Michael Bunting could be a little bit of a gem that they find and have uncovered, a little diamond in the rough type of player. So that's like the unknown player that I think people are going to start to learn the name of pretty quickly in the NHL this season. How does it end for the Maple Leafs? Man.
Do it.
Probably another first round exit.
No.
Probably another first round exit. It's not because the Maple Leafs suck. It's because they're in such a tough division and they're going to have to end up most likely playing one of Tampa or Florida or Boston. And it's just, I've had too many heartbreaks year after year to know better. So now I'm just going to expect the worst and just assume another first round exit is upon us.
That's really where the division becomes important, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not that you're 100% going to avoid an Atlantic team, because you very well could go, if the Leafs won the division, you could go Tampa, Boston 2-3, and you're playing Florida in the first round, or Florida comes in second and you're playing Tampa or Boston in the first round. But my thought would be that even though fans won't want to hear it, and of course this will not satisfy the fan base just on this alone, but again, this is more directed towards, well, how do I make sure that I get past the first round again? And one way to help that will really be, can I get to that 1 seed, and can I play this year's version of Montreal? Can I get the Islanders? Can I get this? I know they've had troubles with like Columbus, for instance, in the past.
They've had their opportunities. That's the sad part. They've had their opportunities the last couple of years. Columbus didn't get it done, and Montreal, they're up 3-1. They had 3 opportunities to eliminate them, exercise the demons, get through to the second round, and were unable to do it. Now you're back into the Atlantic Division, and you're going to have a much tougher opponent than you had the past 2 seasons. Like, it's just, it's easier said than done. And even if you do finish first, unless only 3 teams from this division end up making it, and you get to play one of the teams on the other side, like a Rangers team or a Penguins team or Flyers team or something in the 4th or 5th seed, that would be the only way that I guess it would be. It would make Maple Leaf fans feel a little bit better, perhaps. But
they got to win in the playoffs.
But they got to win in the playoffs. They got it, and we'll see. They said, Marner and Matthews said over the offseason, one of the things that they worked on, sent each other clips and looked at, was how to play in tight. And that was something that they really, really didn't do well with it once the playoffs came, when there was a lack of ice. How are they able to play well? And they didn't. They weren't. So hopefully that's something that they're working on, and hopefully it works out.
I don't want to make it sound like we're not excited for the start of the season, but I feel like me and Mike would both hit fast forward to mid-April right now. Mike just to see the Leafs get to the playoffs, and me just to get to the damn draft lottery again, because that's all we live for around here recently. That's not true. I want to go see Shane Wright play, so that's why I'm looking forward to the hockey season. We got to meet up for that, by the way. Shane Wright, top prospect for the Kingston Frontenacs. I think I looked up, he's playing 9 times within an hour and a half of me, just north of Buffalo. So that's what we're excited about around here. So
yeah, we'll have to see when he's playing Niagara. Playing Niagara?
Niagara, yeah. 3 times I think he plays Niagara this season. In Niagara. No one coming over here. Like we usually go to Erie, but I don't think I even saw Kingston play Erie once, let alone on the road. I don't know if there's something going on OHL-wise crossing the border like that. But anyways, that's the story for another time.
Yeah, my computer's about to die, so we should wrap it up.
Perfect timing, because that's it for us. Follow us on Twitter. You can see our handles here on YouTube if you're not watching, at Sneaky Joe Sports and at Mickey_Canuck. I'll be back on Friday with Rachel Donner, and me and Mike will be back next Tuesday here on the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.